At least we should kick off as well, William, with the latest from the world of HS2, which seems to go from sort of the ridiculous to the even more ridiculous. We got a story this morning after the news that they're probably going to kill off the route to Manchester, having already killed off the route to Leeds. It now turns out there's about 40 staff in charge of HS2, paid at least $150,000 a year. And the outgoing boss earns something like $450,000 a year. And I mean, I was struggling talking to Kevin O'Sullivan earlier this morning to work out what it is that they're actually doing for that.
Well, they're not doing very well, Mike. This is...
Well, they're not doing very much, presumably.
It's a disaster, this whole thing.
Yeah.
Something is very, very wrong. The public ought to know that to date this is costing over £250 million per mile. And if you compare HS2 costs to other public infrastructure projects of a similar type in Europe, in France and Italy and Germany, it's literally almost an order of magnitude more expensive. And they might be very well paid, but they're not doing very well on their budgeting. No. So I think you've just got to call a halt to this. The British public have to have some answers to why this is so grotesquely expensive. It's just beyond belief now. This project has gone. And
it's a typical, again, it's the white elephant's white elephant, isn't it? Because for years, I think people have been saying it's too expensive. It's not really going to make much difference to the world of travel at all, certainly from Birmingham and London. But Andy Burnham has been saying this week that it makes it look as though the government doesn't care about people in the north of England, that it makes people in the north of England second-class citizens. Is he right to say that?
Well, the way the Green Book, the government's public infrastructure spending has worked over the last 20 years, he's got a very, very good case for that, actually. You know, HS2 was originally budgeted at something like 30 billion. We're talking about 91 billion now. Lord Berkeley thinks it'll be 180 billion. Right. It's totally out of control, but it won't even get to the north, this project. There's no point in having, spending 100 billion for a railway line that goes from Birmingham to West London, doesn't even go into Euston. It's a absolutely catastrophic mismanagement of resources. Yeah. It'd been far, far better off having HS3, a good line or improvements to the lines across the northwest particularly. You've got Liverpool to Manchester, the line is poor. Manchester to Leeds, the line is poor. Sheffield gets missed out. Yeah. You could have had a good system from Hull right across, linking all those northern cities for a fraction of the cost. Yeah. So it's a disaster. I think the main reason why they won't axe it is undue influence on the government by the big contractors, basically.
Well, yeah, because the big contractors are presumably contracted to finish the job. So if they get told, well, we don't now have a job for you to finish, I don't know where that leaves everybody.
Well, no, pulling out of a project like this there's a lot of sunk cost, but there's a lot of sunk cost anyway. I mean, this is the problem as pride comes into it from the political class. Yeah. They can't admit, they don't want to admit that they've spent several, tens of billions and it's a disaster. But the thing is, Mike, rationally, you've got to look, are you willing to spend another 100 billion on this?
No. Well, I mean, I used to say without actually my tongue in my cheek that it won't be finished before I die. Because I think the original, sort of planned finish was 2040, but I don't think that's anywhere near happening.
Well, it's not going to go anywhere, Mike. And it's not going to go to Leeds now. It is a disaster. The opportunity cost of this money is sensible projects elsewhere. Yeah. Leeds, for instance, is the biggest city in Europe without a mass transit system. It has no tram. Right. The tram there, the super tram they're proposing, is $1.5 billion. Yeah. A fraction of this crazy project.
I think I was only ever in Leeds once, and I remember trying to get to the railway station, and it was a real problem because it's really difficult to get to in a taxi. You can't get anywhere near it. There was just congestion everywhere. It's very badly constructed for travel, basically, the city. And they're meeting, funnily enough, Labour mayors are meeting there today to discuss what to do about this HS2 problem.
Well, they won't decide it. I mean, I think, I'd expect Andy Burnham and Tracy Brabham to argue their case, fair enough. But they won't decide this. But nationally, it is ludicrous. The politicians have got to admit that this is a badly conceived project in the wrong place. And they've got to cut their losses, I'm afraid. This is only going to get worse if they continue with it.
Yeah, and meanwhile, we find out, of course, that one of the things they've been very efficient at doing is having a woke inclusivity guide. You know, as if that's not bad enough. You know, we've now got every single organisation in the country apparently making sure that they've got everything right on inclusivity, but they're not actually doing anything that they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, what are the public going to think, Mike? I mean, they're wasting literally tens of billions of pounds, but they've produced a nice, I understand, 52-page diversity inclusivity package, just to make sure that the staff know all about unconscious bias and the rest of it. I'd like them to know about budgeting.
Well, I mean, that would be nice, or indeed building an actual railway, because I don't even know. I mean, I was asking this question yesterday, how much of it has been what you might term, in layman's terms, completed? I mean, is there a railway line that goes anywhere at the moment? Are we going to see a railway line that is actually able to be travelled on at some point in the next 10 years if they decide to call a halt to the rest of it? I mean, I just don't know. Nobody seems to be able to tell me.
A lot of the infrastructure, particularly towards London, has been set down, the track beds there. You haven't got railway lines, but you've got infrastructure, crossovers and bridges and so on in there, and that's been a lot of cost. I mean, if you go to Euston, at Drummond Street, Euston, you can see a lot of the infrastructure there has been worked on as well. You know, so a lot has been done. But the key question is, if you're honest and rational, is it worth spending another 100 billion not to get to Manchester and not to get to Leeds? And the answer is no.
Right. It is absolutely absurd, isn't it? But we seem to find ourselves in these sort of cul-de-sacs all the time, you know, where somebody's started a project and then somebody else has carried on with it and then somebody else has inherited it. And, I mean, who knows what will happen at the next election? But if Professor Curtis is right, and it's going to be sometime like next October before the clocks go back, and if Labour do get in, you know, we literally still don't know what they would do about anything, really, do we?
It's a headache for whoever is in. I mean, if Labour win, they've got several headaches, and I suspect that a lot of things will get worse.
Yeah.
No, I mean, as I say, if we were well governed, this would never have happened in the first place. You've got to compare these projects to how other countries do it, and I'm afraid this is off the scale. 5 times the cost, 6 times the cost per mile. No, I just don't buy that. There's something deeply wrong. The economist Michael Taylor has suggested that there may be mass corruption going on, and he doesn't know, but there should be an inquiry into this.
Well, I mean, we always seem to have an inquiry into everything, because when it goes wrong, we have an inquiry. And when everything goes wrong, you've got about 1 million inquiries, and nobody's doing anything. You know, I mean, again, I said this, I think, the last time you and I spoke. We've got conference season now, which blows a huge hole in the kind of business of government and the running of the country. And so we're supposed to sort of just swallow for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, nothing happening. You know, literally nothing.
Yeah, but we'd be better off not. I mean, it was, as I say, I go back to the start, it was a terrible decision. This is not a sensible allocation of resources for the country.
Yeah, no, I get that. But I'm just talking generally. Just generally speaking, it feels like we have this kind of rudderless government going on.
Well, they're certainly, they've lost their way. I mean, there's been chaos the last year, and the Tories have got a lot of problems. It's interesting, actually, the electoral dynamics of this, because Nick Starmer is being found out. I mean, the polls are saying that he gets in and there's a big majority to overturn, but he's on the wrong side of the argument. He's on the wrong side of the value divides with the British people on about 3 or 4 key things, Mike. You know, Europe, he's on the wrong side. He's on the wrong side on net zero. He's on the wrong side on immigration. Yeah. And, so it'll be interesting. It could be very close, actually. You never know.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. More right than wrong, as we say. Good to talk to you, William. Thanks very much indeed. William Coulston, leader of the Social Democratic Party.